Sometimes on these Haag-Streit slit lamps, the joystick will be loose and will rattle. If you can hear it, then it's really, really bad. If your screw is tight on your joystick, it's not the handle. It's probably what's called a control handle, or these are called upper bearings. And if it's worn out, it's going to, this part is going to wear out. It's made of brass, and it's going to fit inside this gliding plate. You can see there's a lot of room in there, and so it's going to wiggle. But a new one will be a little more tighter. So this doesn't wear out. This is steel. This is what wears out. This is brass. These are very expensive. These are not. So it's either these or this or both. And one way you can tell we're going to take it apart is a quick check. We'll take all the parts out and we'll assemble them like they are in the slit lamp. When there's no space in here, that means they're worn out. Then you know these are bad. Here's a couple new ones. Here's what they should look like. Even though I'm squeezing them together, see that space? These are good. So you actually need that space to keep this control handle tight. When these wear out, then the control handle wiggles. So we're going to take it apart. The first thing you have to do is take off your joystick, and most of the time they don't come off easily. That's because they're not tightened onto the control handle correctly, and so they mess up the connection. If it doesn't come up, we use our trusty hammer. Oops. So, the reason it's hard is because if the screw doesn't go right in the correct place, it kind of messes up the connection, and so that's why it's hard to come off. Okay, now we're going to turn it over. And we need to remove these 5 screws. There's our assembly. The screws are going to fall off. I'm going to put it to the side, let them drop. So here we have 3 pieces. We have this cover, this gliding disc or plate, whichever one you call it, and then the gliding plate or disc. Then here's how we get to our control handle. We've got to loosen these 3 screws, and it might be hard to hold it, so use another screwdriver to insert in this hole, and there's a screw underneath that it catches, and that way it'll hold and you can loosen your screws. These 3 screws. You have a spring here. You have this brass spacer, and you'll notice when it's in, it's a little lower than the top. So when you put everything back together, it's going to be a little bit lower than this surface, or else you didn't put it together right. If it's sticking up or even, then you didn't put the upper bearings in correctly. Now you can push from underneath, take off this little brass ring, and here comes one of the upper bearings coming off. Here it is. Then we have our control handle, and then the other bearing can only be taken out when you pull this pin out. You'll have to get some needle nose, and there's a pin in here. You have to pull it straight out. Now that pin is going to sit between the 2 upper bearings. That's what this little square is for. Fits right in there. And now the other upper bearing can come out, and you can push it up with, I'm just using a little Q-tip type stick, and just push it up, go around it and try to push it up evenly, and it will come up. So this is the other one. So we're going to put both of these together around this control handle that was in there, and we're going to see what our space looks like. And it's tight, so there's no space. If you can push everything tight with no space, then they're worn out. They're worn out. And looking at this control handle, I can tell that that's worn out too. That's very different from a new one. I don't know if you can tell the difference. This is the new, and this is the existing. It's worn out. It's because moving around in this gliding plate, gliding disc, back and forth, it just wears out. So I'm going to clean everything up and re-lube it and start putting it back together. Okay, I've cleaned everything up. Going to put some lube on now. First I'm going to put a little bit on this one. You'll notice the surface is kind of sloped, concave. And we will put this one down in with the notch on top because it's going to be underneath the pin. So we're looking for the hole down low where the pin is going to be, and this notch is going to be right under it. And one way you can tell is this hole right here is kind of right in the center, so you can use that as a guide. And just put it straight down. Now it would, if you don't have it right, you can move it a little bit. It should slide. Now we have to put our pin back in. The small side, the small end is going to be sticking out. The wider end is going to be going in. And you have to put it in square so it can fit inside here. So get your needle nose and go in. Okay. The pin is now in. Now we will put a little grease, number 3 grease on this one. And then we're going to put some grease on our control handle. Now this side is going to be going down first because this is where the joystick attaches. So try to get some grease all the way around it, and also get some in this little groove right here because that's what the pin is going to be traveling in here. Okay, get a little bit of grease in there. And now we're going to insert it so that our pin will go right on that track. And we can remember that it's straight, so if we keep everything straight, we can just go straight down. It's not that hard. You'll know when it's in. Okay, fits in. Okay. Now we're going to put the other one on. And one thing about these new ones is they have a little mark right in the center. Right in the center. So that will help you, guide you going down. If yours has a solid back, you might want to get your pointer and just put a little indentation right at the center, so you'll know where it's at. These are pretty soft because they wear out, but they're soft so you can put a little mark on it. See, if this were centered, if this was solid and I was using this one, then I'd know where my pin is by watching that little mark. But the new ones are a little easier because the notch is clearer. You have a little grease on everything, then go straight down. Now you might think you have it in, but try to move it and you'll see, I don't know if you saw that, how it went down more. So if it's lined up with that pin, it's going to sink all the way down. And sometimes it's misleading because you can't see the pin anymore and you don't know. But once you put your brass ring on, if it's sticking up too high, then you know you're not in the correct spot. So you put our brass spacer in, and it's falling down lower than the surface, so we know we're good. We're moving our control handle around. It's moving freely, so we know we're good. We're going to put our spring back on, and our plate with the screws. Now you have to be careful that you get this spring inside this plate. Sometimes it'll try to sneak out and that won't be good. So you just have to keep maneuvering it so that it stays underneath this plate. It's going to want to sneak out. To tighten it again, you can use your other screwdriver and put it in the hole, and so it will hold while you tighten these screws. Check your movement. Should still be moving freely. Now we're going to put a little bit of lube on the tip of this control handle. That's going to be going into our gliding disc. And then we're going to put some in here. And make sure you had cleaned all that out because it's going to have a lot of the brass shavings and fillings from wearing the other one, the previous one, out. So you want to make sure you've gotten that clean. And don't use graphite. Graphite is not good. It acts like sandpaper. Put some lube in here. Again, I'm using number 3 grease. Got some grease here. Now this plate will go on first, and we need to put a little bit of lube on here. And I'm just going to put a little bit. Doesn't take much. Going to put our plate down, line it up with the holes, put our disc on top of the joystick handle, turn it around. It just needs a little bit of lube on this plate. And then for our other plate, what we're going to do also here is just put a little bit of grease on here and swirl it around. And then wipe it off. And when we do that, even though we've wiped it off, we've left a slight film on here. And that's going to be good. That'll help keep noise down from this disc hitting it. Put the screws back in, and the plate's lined up with the hole. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold one end up a little bit while I'm laying down the plate to get to the first screw hole. See, I've still got my fingers holding up the plate while I'm screwing this first screw down. Just a little bit to get it started, and I'm going to start the other screws. Still holding up a little bit, so I'm holding it in place. But you don't have to do it this way. Once I've got them started, I'm just going to drop it, and I'll go ahead and tighten them. Once you have them all tight, check the movement. You can turn it back over. We can put our joystick handle back on. Now, this is going to be clean because it's new. If it wasn't, if you were still using it, you might need to file the connection a little bit so that when you slide your handle back on, it's going to slide in. Now, this one might needed a little bit of filing because it was hard to come off, so something might have boogered it up. We'll give it a try, see if it'll fit on. Okay, it fits on. Now it's not going to be going all the way down. It's probably going to be coming up a little bit. Start screwing it in and kind of move it so that that screw finds the place it's supposed to go in. And once you know you're going in, then you can tighten it the rest of the way. Now when we move our joystick, it's solid and it's quiet. So sometimes you only need to replace one of these bearings, but they're pretty cheap, so you could replace both of them. But you might be able to get away with just one, just so that when you squeeze them together, there's a little bit of a gap. And if there's a gap, then you're good. But if there's no gap, you know they're bad. But if there's too much gap, then it might be a little bit hard getting everything back together. But anyway, so that's the joystick. That will help to silence the rattling there. There's going to be a little bit. There's always going to be a little bit because it's supposed to be that way, but when it's excessive, that needs to be changed. One more thing I wanted to alert you about is the new control handle is going to have a hole where the handle attaches to it. The old style have a flat surface. So it doesn't matter what kind of handle you're using. The screw that you have in your handle should match what type of connection you have on your control handle. If you have a new one, it's going to have a small hole, and you're going to need a screw that's got a point on it. The old style is flat, and the screw only has to be a flat. If you match the screw with the control handle, then they'll stick better. They'll hold better. So it doesn't matter if you use the old style handle, the newer style, or the newest style. That doesn't matter. The screws will fit. The threads are the same, but it's the point that's important depending on which control handle you're using. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And here are some numbers in case that can help.